Hi everyone, Dr. Samson Chukwuede once again. Today, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. Tutorial for today will be on types of validity in quantitative educational research. It's just going to be an introduction. The details of types of validity will be treated in future video. Let's go to the lesson properly. As a way of introduction, let's look at how instrument, data collection, and inferences are connected with regard to validity in quantitative educational research. We know that data collection in quantitative research requires the use of instruments such as questionnaire, rating scale, as the case may be. And this collection of data leads to data analysis to draw inferences about the study. That means instruments is very important in data drawing inferences from a study. However, if a researcher decides to develop an instrument by himself, that is self-designed instrument, adapt the instrument or adopt, the research instrument must possess some certain qualities. And these qualities may include validity, reliability, usability, as the case may be. And the essence is for us to draw inferences from that data analysis. That tells you the importance of some of these properties, such as validity, in drawing inferences about our study. Now let's proceed to the lesson and discuss what validity is and introduce the different types of validity. All right, let's look at the meaning of validity in research. Validity is the degree to which a test or an instrument measures what it is supposed to measure and consequently permits appropriate interpretation of scores or results. If an instrument is able to measure what it's supposed to measure, that instrument should also permit appropriate interpretation of scores. When an instrument satisfies these two basic conditions, it is said to be valid. That is, it must measure what is set out to be measured, and whatever it measures should be able to be used to interpret the scores obtained from such a measure. Now let's look at the different types of validity. The first type we want to look at here is the phase validity, which is sometimes called the logical validity. There is also the content validity, the criterion validity, or sometimes called criterion-related validity. Then there is the construct validity and consequential validity. Please take note that each type of validity has a purpose upon which it is set to handle, and there is a method of undergoing such a validity. That is how the validity is conducted. I'm not going to do detailed work on the how here. I'm going to release subsequent videos that will look at the different methods of conducting the different validities. So look out for that video. You can't afford to miss that video for you to be able to conduct appropriate validity of your instruments. Now let's look at the meaning of phase validity. Phase validity involves only a casual, superficial, and subjective inspection of the items of an instrument to judge whether those items of the instrument cover the content the instrument purports to measure. If an instrument is said to measure educational success or academic success and is given to an expert to look at, the expert is said not to consider what exactly the definition of academic success means, but he just look at the instrument based on its casual look, inspect it to see how it is formatted or structured. That is simply phase validity. That is why phase validity takes care of language use, feasibility, structure, and formatting of the items of the instrument. I'll give another detail of what this phase validity means. If you take, for instance, you want to measure plastering skill of a technical student, which is a building technology student in technical college, the phase validity of this instrument, if given to someone like a measurement evaluator, he or she can conduct phase validity here, but not really content validity, because he or she does not know what the skills needed in plastering is, or is not an expert of that field. So conducting language use of that instrument, feasibility of that instrument, structure and formatting of such instrument is simply face validation, but not content validation. Now, that simply tells you that face validity has a method. It's simply a method. Its method may just include judgment from experts who makes comments based on the facial look of the instrument, not as the definition of the contents of the item of the instrument. It can also, the method of conducting face validity may also go through a sample of laymen in order to get a good language use of the instrument. Having looked at face validity, another aspect of validity important is content validity. Sometimes beginning researchers or even some level of competent researchers seems to contradict face validity and content validity. They are not the same. Remember, in face validity, what that content is all about is not really considered. But in content validity, it is said to be the degree to which an instrument measures a defined content area, that is a universal or domain-specific content area. If you are measuring a content area like academic success, as I mentioned earlier, first it is important to know what academic success is all about. And then the expert that must conduct such validity must be an expert from the educational field, especially from the field or specializations in education. So content validity is a degree to which an instrument measures a defined content area or domain of specific content area. That tells that content validity compares the content of the instrument to the domain being measured. That is, whatever that is in the content of the instrument will be compared to the definition of that domain being measured. Now, it simply tells that content validity requires both item validity, which means the relevance of the item of the instrument, to the content or to the domain being measured, and it also requires sampling validity, which measures how well the number of the items in that instrument actually represents the domain. Let me give an example here. If someone is measuring something about students' knowledge in physics and decided to just measure only knowledge of wave in physics, such instrument does not have content validity, because wave is not the only topic in physics. All right, so content validity has methods, and one of the methods is what experts judgment. Here, the experts are those that specialize in the domain in which the instrument is being used to measure. Table of specification can also be used to do content validity, and other statistical tools are also necessary for content validity. Another important type of validity is criterion validity, or you may say criterion-related validity. It ascertains the degree to which the scores of the items of an instrument relates with the scores of the items of a second or another instrument. That second or another instrument is often called the criterion. That means you are comparing the scores obtained from an instrument designed by a researcher to the instrument that is used as a judgment over the instrument used by the researcher. So it is a measure of the degree to which the scores of the items of an instrument being validated is correlated with the scores of the items of another or a second instrument, which is often considered as the criterion. It means that its method is simply a correlation between two scores. However, there are two types of criterion-related validity. The two types include concurrent validity, and concurrent validity simply compares the scores of an instrument to the scores of already existing instruments, both administered at the same time or almost at the same time. So if you have an instrument you are using to measure a given behavior, for instance, self-esteem designed by you, when you administer the self-esteem designed by you as the researcher, you also administer a standard scale used to measure self-esteem, for instance, the one developed by Rosenberg. So when you administer these two instruments at the same time or almost the same time and compare the scores and see whether there is a correlation between the two, you are said to be conducting concurrent criterion validity. However, another type of validity is predictive validity. In this case, it compares the scores of an instrument to the scores of another instrument. That instrument is called external criteria, and it is not administered at the same time, meaning you may administer the one developed by you as a researcher now, and then in future another instrument is used to measure a behavior relating to what you are doing. I'll give an example like this. Consider where there is an entry examination into the university admission, and then you want to know whether this entry examination is actually important. You may wait until the students go through their academic section after the admission. On graduation, you can compare the scores obtained from the entry examination to the GPA and see whether the entry examination correlates or predicts the GPA of the students. So remember, once again, criterion-related validity has two types: the concurrent validity, which you measure at the same time. The instruments may be the same or different, but the idea is towards a given behavior that is measured at the same time, almost the same time. While predictive validity is measured at two different times. One is measured at early time, and the external criteria, which is the one you want to use to judge the one in mind, is measured in the future. Another important validity here is the construct validity. In fact, many researchers or scholars have said that it is the most important validity. Hence, for me, it is the overarching validity. It is the degree to which an instrument correctly operationalizes the concept being studied. If you have a concept which is technically a construct, meaning it is unobservable, you need to raise items to measure such a construct. Those items, if they correctly operationalize that construct, that is the concept that you are studying, it means construct validity is attained. In that case, we can say that construct validity is the extent to which an instrument measures intended hypothetical construct. Why is it called hypothetical? Because the exact construct you are measuring does not have its own specific meaning, but depends on other meaning. So let's take, for instance, if you have academic engagement, for instance, which may include 3 dimensions. Measuring academic engagement may include vigor, dedication, and absorption. You see that academic engagement is dependent on vigor, dedication, and absorption. So if these 3 factors can correctly operationalize academic engagement, construct validity is attained. Similarly, vigor, dedication, and absorption depends on some items that can measure them. And that is why we said that the method involved in construct validity may include correlation, factor analysis, structural equation model, as the case may be. My future video on the methods of establishing the different types of validity. We handle the different methods in details. So look out for that video. You are not going to miss that video. So we have two different types of construct validity. One is the convergent validity, and it is the extent to which two scales or two measures are highly correlated and they are measuring the same construct. So the extent a measure has high correlation with another measure, both measures measuring the same construct. Contrary to this is the divergent or discriminant validity. It is the extent a measure has low correlation with another measure, but both of the measures, which are the two instruments, are measuring different constructs. Like I said earlier, look out for my video that will handle this type of construct in detail. It is not as easy as it appears here, but my future video on how to conduct them, how to handle construct validity and other types of validity will soon be released. All right, the last aspect of validity to be discussed here is the consequential validity. Phase validity, content validity, criterion validity, and construct validity. They all seem to establish the meaning of scores about an instrument, but in reality, providing information about the meaning of scores of a measure or an instrument is not enough. According to e.t.c, who is the first person to bring this type of validity into existence, observed and argued that there is more to scores, the meaning of scores. There is more to scores than their meaning. The impact of the score of a measure is very important in making decisions. It is this, considering this impact of a measure, that is called consequential validity, and that is why it is said to be concerned with the after effect of the measurement. The effects could be positive or negative, relating to social or societal consequences that result from using that instrument to measure a construct or for a particular purpose. So in drawing inferences about the behavior of individuals, the type of instrument developed to measure that behavior needs to be considered very critically if it has consequences or not. So consequential validity is used to refer to the fact that the test scores, the theory and belief behind the construct, and the language used to label the construct also embodies certain values in drawing inferences about the individuals who responded to the instrument. That is why the key issue in consequential validity, or the key question in consequential validity, is what are the effects of the various forms of testing an individual. So it is not enough to just interpret the score, but the consequences are needed. So this brings me to the end of the different types of validity. Before we go, remember I promised there's going to be a series of videos on how to conduct each type of validity, the method of conducting them. Nevertheless, let's look at a puzzle. We cannot leave this lesson without having a puzzle. So, what do you think about the following puzzle? The first one is, what are the basic differences between phase validity and content validity? Are they the same? From what we've learned so far, what's your judgment? Let me see your comments about it. Another one is, how is divergent validity different from convergent validity? I want to see your comments about this. Finally, in what ways is predictive validity different from concurrent validity? If you have not subscribed to this tutorial, to this channel, please subscribe. Oh, thumb up to show that you like this tutorial. That is, click the thumb that is indicating like to show that you like this tutorial. Make comments and continue watching my video. Until I come again, see you. Bye bye.